a Russian Kilo-class submarine, nicknamed the Black Hole for its silent, stealthy acoustics, stealthily departed from Novorossiysk, heading straight for Odessa in its launch tubes. Caliber missiles were loaded and ready to strike Ukrainian ports and fuel depots. But what the submarine didn't know was that every meter of water it passed through was another tightening thread of a death trap. Somewhere in the darkness, Ukraine's secret weapons moved like a school of sharks. An outer ring of drones created a distracting noise. A middle ring clung to the sonar blind spots, and the inner ring blocked the escape route. Unaware of the trap, the Russian commander received no signals. The sea surface remained calm. Then suddenly, a muffled explosion echoed from the deep, shaking the entire hull. The water pressure slammed down like a sledgehammer, and equipment failed across the board. In seconds, the Predator was transformed into prey, trapped in the deep sea. What really happened in that dark abyss was this Ukraine's cold message to Russia that every intruder will be detected, hunted, and forever buried at the bottom of the sea. To find out what truly happened in the moment the Predator was swallowed by the Black Sea's death trap, all will be revealed in the following video. The Shadow Under the Waves. On the morning of August 8, 2025, the thin fog had not yet lifted from the coast of Novorossiysk when it was torn apart by the low rumble of a diesel-electric engine. Beneath the surface, a 74-meter-long steel monster, a Russian Kilo-class submarine, was slowly leaving the pier. This is the type of submarine that the West calls the Black Hole for its ability to move so quietly that it leaves almost no trace on sonar. Its destination this time was the waters off the coast of Odessa, Ukraine. Russia's objective was clear close in to firing range, select a favorable position, and launch Kaliber cruise missiles. This type of missile had previously shaken many Ukrainian cities. They can carry warheads weighing hundreds of kilograms, fly at subsonic speeds, and hit their targets just minutes after leaving the launch tubes. If a Kaliber is launched from the sea, ground-based warning systems have almost no time to react. The Kilo-class submarine wasn't alone. It was escorted by the missile frigate Admiral Makarov and a Ka-27 anti-submarine helicopter, while the frigate provided surface protection and anti-air firepower. The Ka-27 served as the eyes and ears from the sky, dropping sonar buoys into the sea to scan for any unusual underwater signs. This was a coordinated attack group the submarine strikes from the deep. The frigate provides an outer defense perimeter, and the helicopter sweeps for any threats from below. At the Naval Command Center in Odessa, sonar and radar screens began to show faint, intermittent signals, the familiar signature of a Kilo-class sub moving in patrol mode. This information was immediately encrypted and sent to Kiev via an emergency communication channel. In Kiev, the military intelligence of Ukraine HUR had been tracking these movements in advance. Just a few days earlier, the HUR had sent shockwaves by publicizing a classified document package on Russia's most modern nuclear missile submarine, the Dmitry Pozharsky. Detailed blueprints, compartment diagrams, and even lists of sailors and officers were made public. This was more than just information. It was a warning Ukraine knows more than Russia thinks and can exploit an opponent's weaknesses at any time. With over 2 years of battlefield experience, Ukraine understood that they couldn't afford to wait this time. If the Kilo-class submarine got close enough to fire, Odessa would be at risk of a surprise attack. The consequences would be severe. Fuel depots would burn, commercial ports would shut down, agricultural exports would be paralyzed, and public morale would be shaken. Commanders quickly reviewed the files from the Crimea Bridge operation, a strike that Ukraine was proud of, as proof of its ability to attack deep within Russian territory. In that operation, Toloka 400 and Toloka 1000 unmanned underwater vehicles, UUVs approached the bridge's underwater structure and planted a 100-kiloliter bomb at a depth of 10 meters. Russia claimed the bridge suffered no major damage, but surveillance camera footage released by Ukraine showed that they had penetrated a heavily protected waterway. The Toloka 400 and Toloka 1000 were the aces of the deep sea. Toloka 400, a range of 1,000 km, carrying half a ton of explosives. Toloka 1000, a range of 2,000 km, carrying up to 5 tons of explosives. Both could dive to a depth of 40 meters and operate quietly, making them nearly invisible to sonar. When combined with the Marichka, a type of UUV specialized in tracking targets and attacking hulls, Ukraine could create a death trap under the water. The plan for August 8, 2025 was to use these silent assassins to ambush the Kilo-class submarine before it could target Odessa with its Calibra missiles. That afternoon, the Naval Command approved Operation Underwater Ambush. The plan included USV Sea Baby and Magura V5 on the surface, intentionally creating noise and broadcasting radar signals to attract the attention of the Russian frigate and helicopter. Toloka 1000, Toloka 400, and Marichka diving deep, approaching the Russian submarine from different directions, exploiting the blind spots in the enemy's sonar. This was a major gamble. If successful, Ukraine would neutralize a threat right off its coast. If it failed, they would lose some of their most advanced weapons, and Odessa could suffer a devastating attack. Off the coast, the wind began to pick up, and whitecaps dotted the waves. In the distance, two sea babies shot toward the northeast like silver arrows, while deep below, the Toloka and Marichka stealthily moved, awaiting the command to fire. A few dozen nautical miles away, the Kilo-class sub was still advancing, slowly but surely, like a predator confident that its prey was unaware it was being watched. But this time, the prey was ready, and the waters ahead were no longer safe. The opening strike in the Sea of Death. 50:42 August 8, 2025. Whitecaps crashed against the hull of the Admiral Makarov frigate as it ran parallel to the Kilo-class submarine at a safe distance. On deck, gunners were in position, with the RBU 6000 launch tubes aimed at the open sea. From above, the Ka-27 anti-submarine helicopter circled, occasionally dropping a sonar buoy attached to a long cable to listen for any suspicious noises underwater. Suddenly, from the southwest, two small dots appeared on the Russian radar. Initially, they were mistaken for small fishing boats, but a few minutes later, the Makarov signal analysis system sounded an alarm. Their speed was too high for civilian vessels, nearly 70 km/h, and their radar signature was abnormal. The combat officer immediately reported to the commander, likely enemy USVs. Without waiting, the six-barreled AK-630 cannon on the frigate's bow began to shriek, firing a stream of 30mm rounds at the two approaching targets. The rounds hit the water, creating a series of white plumes. In the Ka-27 helicopter, the crew also rotated their weapons, ready to fire rockets if the targets got too close. Ukraine's two sea babies were the bait thrown out first, gliding over the waves like silver arrows. They sprayed white water, dodging and weaving their way toward the Russian frigate. Their mission was not to survive, but to draw the enemy's eyes and ears to the surface. Meanwhile, about 6 km east of the Russian ships, at a depth of nearly 40 meters, the true ghosts of Ukraine were moving. Toloka 1000, carrying almost 5 tons of explosives, silently advanced toward the Kilo-class submarine, thanks to its nearly noiseless electric propulsion system and a hull covered in sonar-absorbing material. It slipped through the Ka-27's initial scans. Approximately 200 meters away, the Marichka maintained its programmed distance, acting as the listening device for the entire operation. It continuously picked up the infrasonic signals from the Russian submarine's propellers, compared them to its stored data, and then sent the coordinates via low-frequency encrypted waves to the Toloka 1000. On board the Admiral Makarov, gunners were busy firing, tracking the zigzagging Sea Baby. One of the Sea Babies was hit, flipping over and exploding, creating a large plume of water. The Russian commander nodded. One down, one to go. He was unaware that at that very moment, under his feet, the Toloka 1000 had already passed through the first sonar defenses and was less than 800 meters from the Kilo-class submarine. The Russian submarine maintained a slow speed, confident in the protection of the frigate and helicopter. In the control room, sonar officers scanned regularly, detecting nothing but the noise of ocean currents and the Makarov itself. The silence lasted only a few more seconds. The Toloka 1000 increased its speed slightly, seizing the opportunity when the Ka-27 turned in another direction to handle the jamming signal from the Sea Baby. The final approach path was chosen, closing in from the port side, where the submarine had fewer active sensors. 15 after 51. The distance was now only 120 meters. The Marichka sent a target lock signal 3 short, low-frequency pings, and immediately changed course to avoid the upcoming shockwave. The Toloka 1000 rushed forward, impacting the midsection of the submarine. right under the battery compartment and the central control room. The underwater explosion echoed like a muffled thunderclap. A giant air bubble erupted, pressing against the hull, then bursting, sending a shockwave throughout the compartments. Russia's reaction was immediate. The Makarov frigate stopped firing at the remaining Sea Baby, shifting all of its firepower and sensors underwater. The RBU-6000 fired, launching a barrage of anti-submarine rockets that created a wall of explosions below. The Ka-27 descended, dropping more sonar buoys and beginning to drop anti-submarine grenades. Under the water, the Toloka 1000 had completed its mission and was shattered into 1,000 pieces of metal. The Marichka, still intact, remained in a position to observe and assess the damage. From the data it collected, the dent on the submarine's hull was large enough to affect its speed and quietness, forcing the Kilo class to choose between continuing its mission or retreating. In the Kilo class command room, the tension was palpable. The commander received a report a section of the electrical compartment was flooded. The propulsion system had reduced power, and the port side sonar had lost its signal. He understood that if he tried to advance further, the risk of another attack was very high, but deciding to retreat now would also mean missing a strategic strike on Odessa. On the Ukrainian side, the command center received a confirmation signal from the Marichka target, severely damaged. A Toloka 400 was ordered to approach to deliver a follow-up blow if Russia did not withdraw. On the surface, the final Sea Baby, though hit and damaged, still circled, holding the Makarov's attention for a few more minutes. The battle had only just begun, but in this opening strike, Ukraine had proven one thing even under the waves. Where Russia believed itself to be invulnerable, there were still ghosts who knew how to find the weakest point and strike. The fury of the deep-sea missile. 50:55 August 8, 2025. The underwater explosion still echoed as a low ringing in the ears of the Kilo-class submarine sailors. The acrid smell of burnt wires mingled with the scent of leaking hydraulic fluid, creating a suffocating atmosphere in the control room. The flood alarm blared incessantly in the portside electrical compartment. Sailors rushed to seal the watertight bulkheads, simultaneously pumping out water and trying to maintain balance as the hull listed slightly. Above, the frigate Admiral Makarov switched to maximum anti-submarine warfare mode. A second volley of RBU-6000s launched, sending 12 anti-submarine rockets into the water to detonate in a chain, creating a shockwave wall on the seabed. The Ka-27 immediately descended, dropping 3 sonar buoys in quick succession, then circled back to drop more PLAB 250-120 anti-submarine grenades. Each weighed over 100 kilos and was designed to generate immense pressure within its blast radius. But even with Russia's furious response, Ukraine's Ghost Squad had not yet been fully revealed. The Marichka, still clinging to the edge of the attack range, maintained absolute silence, only collecting data and awaiting orders. At another location, the Toloka 400, smaller and faster, was closing in from the southeast. Its mission was to deliver a follow-up blow, targeting the Kilo class's torpedo compartment, a hit that would force the submarine to retreat immediately. From the command center in Kyiv, technicians monitored every line of sonar data as it came in. The path of the Toloka 400 was a green streak on the screen, weaving through gaps in the Russian sonar network. They knew time was not on their side if Russia recovered enough of its systems or detected their approach. All their advantages would vanish. 15:59, the Ka-27 reported a strange signal at a depth of 35 meters, about 600 meters from the starboard side of the Makarov. The commander immediately ordered the Makarov to swivel its 76mm cannon and fire a volley of water-bursting rounds, both to destroy and to force the target to dive deeper. The Toloka 400 seized the opportunity, slowing down and descending to 40 meters, dodging through the bubble cloud created by the cannon fire. These gas bubbles unintentionally shielded it, obscuring its sonar reflection. In the Kilo-class control room, the commander had still not decided to retreat. He hoped the Makarov and Ka-27 could sweep away the threat so the submarine could continue its mission. But by now, their speed had dropped to 5 knots. The port side sonar was completely offline, and some control panels were still flickering. Every minute that passed was a minute of grave danger. 16:03, the Toloka 400 approached within 80 meters of the submarine's starboard side. From Kiev, the target lock command was sent. The Marichka transmitted precise positioning signals and then pulled away to avoid the impending shockwave. The Toloka 400 accelerated, its nose aimed directly at the torpedo compartment. The second explosion occurred just a few minutes after the echo of the first one had faded. The blast pressure dislodged several panels in the weapons bay, causing partial flooding and jamming the launch tube mechanisms on the Kilo class's control panel. The arrow lights flashed red incessantly. The submarine's commander had no other choice: prepare to retreat. Maintain sonar silence. Head for Crimea. The Makarov immediately received and implemented the retreat order. The frigate dropped another series of sonar buoys behind it to block any pursuit, while the K-27 circled the area to ensure no other UUVs could approach. However, these measures were purely defensive, intended only to protect the wounded submarine. On the Ukrainian side, the Marichka's signal confirmed that the Kilo class had changed course and was speeding out of the area. A quick analysis by technicians concluded that with the current damage, the submarine would need at least a few weeks for repairs, during which time it could not participate in any offensive missions. 1610. The last Sea Baby, running on just one working engine, was finally destroyed by the Makarov's 30mm cannon. But its mission had been completed long ago to create enough distraction for the UUVs to close in and strike. From the Makarov's deck, Russian gunners looked out at the choppy sea, seeing no enemy, only faint oil slicks and a few floating debris. Deep below, Ukraine's surviving UUVs, the Marichka, and a small reconnaissance drone were retreating from the area, maintaining radio silence to avoid being tracked. Operation Underwater Ambush ended in less than 40 minutes of combat, but its consequences for Russia would be far more lasting. The Kilo class was severely damaged, forced to leave its strategic area of operation, while Ukraine lost no underwater vehicles, only 2 USVs that were prepared to be sacrificed. In Kiev, a preliminary report was sent to command target neutralized, Odessa area temporarily safe, but at the same time, the combat officers understood that every such victory would make Russia more cautious and improve its defense systems, meaning that future ambushes would be much more difficult. For the Ukrainian Navy, this battle was more than just a tactical victory. It was a statement even against an opponent with superior numbers and equipment. Technological superiority and flexible tactics can turn the tide, even in the deepest waters of the Black Sea. A new era under the sea. On the morning of August 9, 2025, when news of the severely damaged Kilo-class submarine spread beyond internal military circles, the lights came on in meeting rooms from Kyiv to Brussels, Washington, and Tokyo, although the Russian side remained completely silent and issued no statements. Western intelligence quickly confirmed via satellite photos that a Kilo-class submarine had returned to the port of Sevastopol, being towed by a rescue vessel, with numerous temporary patches on its hull and signs of continuous water pumping. In Kiev, the Ministry of Defense held a brief press conference. Blurry footage from a camera mounted on the Marichka was released, showing the moment the explosion sent a giant bubble of gas swirling around the submarine's hull. A spokesperson did not reveal technical details, but affirmed, Ukraine will continue to use all necessary technology and tactics to protect its seaports and maritime transport routes. In Brussels, NATO officials closely monitored the developments. An internal report to the NATO Secretary General emphasized, "This is clear proof that unmanned underwater vehicles can shift the naval power balance in the Black Sea, and in the future, in other strategic areas." Several Baltic NATO members immediately requested an assessment of the possibility of deploying coastal defense UUVs to counter Russian underwater activities in Kaliningrad. Washington reacted faster than anyone. The U.S. Department of Defense issued a statement congratulating Ukraine's efforts to defend its legitimate territory, and announced it would expand its unmanned maritime technology support program. U.S. military sources revealed that the Pentagon was considering sending more mobile sonar sensors and low-frequency communication systems to increase the ability to command UUVs at long range. Japan, South Korea, and Australia countries in the Pacific Security Alliance chain showed particular interest. The Japanese press analyzed that if Ukraine could successfully strike a Russian submarine in the Black Sea with a UUV, then the possibility of applying this tactic in other seas, such as the Pacific, was entirely plausible. An editorial in the Yomiuri Shimbun even stated the scenario of UUVs being transported by cargo ships to Allied ports and secretly deployed is no longer theoretical, but a realistic option. In Moscow, although the Russian Ministry of Defense remained silent, many members of Russian military forums expressed concern. Some anonymous sources reported that the Russian Navy had ordered a complete review of all submarine escort procedures and was accelerating the installation of static sonar systems in key areas near Crimea and Novorossiysk. The United Nations was not left out. In a closed session of the Security Council, the Russian representative accused Ukraine of escalating the war and threatening international maritime security. The Ukrainian representative retorted that all actions took place in waters under Ukraine's legitimate control or in international waters. To prevent a clear attack on civilian infrastructure, the Western countries on the Security Council largely sided with Ukraine, while some neutral countries called for de-escalation and the establishment of an underwater arms control mechanism. Strategically, the battle on August 8, 2025 brought Ukraine more than just a victory. First, it eliminated an immediate threat to Odessa, allowing southwestern seaports to operate continuously and ensuring that the flow of agricultural exports to Africa and the Middle East was not interrupted. Second, it sent a strong message that Russia could not act with impunity, even in areas where it believed it had an absolute advantage. International military analysts unanimously noted that this was a turning point for modern naval warfare. Instead of relying on large submarines or warships, a nation could use small, hard-to-detect, remotely controlled vehicles to strike strategic high-value targets. The concept of asymmetry was taken to a new level, where a few $100,000 invested in a UUV could neutralize a military asset worth hundreds of millions of dollars. At naval academies in the US, UK, and France, instructors have already begun to incorporate the underwater ambush scenario into their curricula. Simulation exercises show that with a seamless coordination of intelligence, decoy USVs, and attack UUVs, a small force can still penetrate an opponent's multi-layered defenses. For Ukraine, this battle also opened a new chapter in its long-term campaign. The Naval Command has ordered additional new variants of the Toloka and Marichka, with the ability to dive deeper, operate at a longer range, and integrate artificial intelligence to autonomously find and track targets. At the same time, they are also calculating a plan to expand the battlefield beyond the Black Sea, leveraging their alliance network to deploy UUVs in other seas if necessary. But along with the pride, there are also warnings. Russia will surely seek to retaliate, not just by strengthening its sonar defenses, but also by potentially developing its own attack UUVs or exploiting similar tactics in sensitive areas of Ukraine. An underwater arms race is beginning, and it is not limited to just two countries. As the sun set on the Black Sea on the evening of August 9th, Odessa's lights remained on, and cargo ships continued to leave the port. In Kyiv, engineers were examining every frame from the Marichka's camera to learn lessons for the next battles. And in distant capitals, from Washington and Tokyo to Canberra, people were realizing that a new era of warfare had truly begun, the era of the underwater ghosts. All of the above content is a simulation, a hypothetical, and strategic analysis. It does not serve the purpose of inciting violence, political bias, or military provocation or war. The content is for hypothetical simulation and analysis that we, as individuals, believe could occur. Any misinterpretations will not be accepted. We are not responsible for any interpretation or application of the video content. Viewers should evaluate, verify information, and receive it with discretion. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end. If you are passionate about military affairs and enjoy analysis and creating hypotheses, please stay with our channel. If you found this video interesting, please click like and subscribe to not miss any daily updates from us. Now, you can watch some of our newest and most popular videos currently on the screen. Goodbye and see you in the next video.